And welcome to ABC-7 Extra Sunday. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Ross. Tonight, we're looking at the rise in respiratory virus cases. Flu, COVID, RSV, they're all making people miserable and in rare cases can be deadly. In December, a 13-year-old girl here in El Paso with pre-existing conditions died from the flu. Tonight, ABC-7 medical contributor Dr. Okashika Alozi with Sunset West Health is here with what you need to know to keep your family healthy. Dr. Alozi, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you've been an infectious disease doctor for many years. Is El Paso seeing more cases of respiratory illnesses compared to last year?
So I think it's hard to tell, primarily because the city health department doesn't have those numbers up online comparatively. When you look across the state, there does seem to be an increase of what we call ILI, or influenza-like illness, but that comprises COVID, RSV, influenza, and an assortment of things that we can't actually measure.
So is it primarily the flu?
It is primarily flu. So if you look whether it's across the nation, across the state, and specifically in El Paso, we had a massive spike in December, starting to come down, but that is still the driving virus in our environment.
And let's take a look at the flu tracker from Walgreens drugstore. Here it is on the screen. El Paso is seeing high flu activity. In fact, they're like 5th in the nation.
It's amazing. So Walgreens is not actually testing, and so those numbers don't represent the testing, but it does represent the amount of Tamiflu, which is a medication used to treat influenza specifically, and we are number 5 in the nation right now.
Are people getting their flu vaccine? Obviously not enough are.
I think our flu vaccine rates are down. They've been down consistently over the last 5 years, part of the sort of socio-political environment that we're in, which is unfortunate. But again, we're always going to remind people, get the vaccines that you need to protect yourself.
So what are the symptoms, the flu symptoms to look for?
So I think in all of that kind of bucket of influenza-like activity, it's the coryza, the running nose, cough may or may not be a part of it. Body aches are really predominant in that, and just feeling like crud, right? It's hard to tell specifically what you have just by your symptoms, and so at some point in time, if you're feeling sick 2 to 3 days, you got to go get tested.
I was going to ask you that. You know, the symptoms are so similar. You know, what do you do? What can you, how can you tell what you have?
You know, typically I tell people, hey, if you feel like crap, stay at home. And that's the number one sort of recommendation or prescription that I'll give people. But if you're feeling bad a day, 2 days, third day, still having fever, body aches, you probably do need to get tested, because there are treatments for certain types of the viruses.
How long can you expect to be sick, and what can you do before you go to a clinic or the ER to treat your symptoms?
Yeah, my sort of rule of thumb is 48 hours. So if you're still sick after 2 days and you've taken Tylenol, you've taken some ibuprofen, you probably should get medical assistance, especially if you're feeling short of breath. If you have an under 5 age kid, unfortunately you talked about the unfortunate girl that was 13, had pre-existing conditions that we're not really sure about, or if you're older, usually above 65, and you're feeling sick for 2 days, short of breath, you got to go see somebody.
And of course, if you have younger kids in school, it's a petri dish there, and they come home with something, and you end up catching it, right?
Absolutely. And so I have a kid in school. He's a freshman, not really the elementary school age that we particularly talk about when they're transferring viruses. But knock on wood, I haven't been sick. But yeah, kids are a vector. All
right. Is there anything you can do preemptively to try and avoid the flu? It seems like you can't avoid it completely, though.
I think the biggest thing is vaccinate, right? So if you're at a certain age, above 65, there's an RSV vaccine. At any age, there's an influenza vaccine. If you feel sick, you can get Paxlovid. COVID also has a vaccine. But apart from that, if you are sick, stay at home. If you're going into an area and you have those medical comorbidities that we often talk about, you may want to rethink it, especially at the peak ILI season, which is really October to February.
Okay, so we're still in the midst of it.
We are, totally.
All right. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with ABC-7 medical contributor Dr. Okashika Alozi. Stay with us. You're watching ABC-7 Extra Sunday.